This is KRP, Ken's Random Podcast.
Thanks for joining me today for episode 51 of KRP, Ken's Random Podcast. A disclaimer here, the quality is not up to par. Scott lives in a bunker in the hills of Arkansas, so we had a hard time getting Zoom to work properly, and he had never used it before. So our apologies for the audio quality, but listen to the great content from Scott Segraves. Many years ago, Scott Segraves and I, while working at KXKC, said, man, if they would let us do a radio show, but the powers that be never would have let Scott Segraves and I be on the air at the same time doing a morning show. Do you agree, Scoot?
Well, other than my inability to get out of bed before noon,
Yeah.
but as for the content and the FCC citations, I think they probably made a wise decision and kept us both out of jail.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we contended that it would be a great radio show, but I'll just say this. When you look at other people that have done this and succeeded and not been, I don't know, maybe put in jail, you have famous guys like Don Imus and then, lately ugly Howard Stern, who's making $50 million a year. And you and I could have easily have done that, right?
I kind of originally lived on $50 million a year. I don't know if I could have ever carried it home from the bank, but
that's okay, man. That's okay. So now we're doing a radio show on KRP. My guest is Scott Segraves, or is it Scott Segraves? I'm not sure. Scoot, you've had so many names since I've known you. I don't know where to start, but why don't we start with Scott Segraves? What an impressive radio name. How did you come up with that?
Well, let's go all the way back to not all the way back to the beginning. Let's go back to when I was born. I was handed the name tag George Basil Segraves III. If you close your eyes and saw a small town legal shingle with three names on it, mine was the one with the tiny print on the bottom. I was supposed to be Segraves and Segraves, attorneys at law.
Ooh.
Well, I was a little too fat to crawl, so I scooted, and it just dawned on me as we were setting up to do this, Ken, all the years of my life when there were people around who could have answered it, I never thought to ask who was the first one that started calling me Scooter. So I can't find out where the Scooter came from, but it stuck with me until I went to work as a college sophomore at KAKC in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I get there. I've been hired initially to do a couple of weekend shows, Saturday and Sunday, 6 to midnight. But I got there, and the assistant program director, Harry Wilson, said, we've had somebody leave. Would you be able to do the all-night show? Now, having a college scholarship that I had to maintain grades to maintain, how sensible was this, Ken? I've got classes from 8 till noon and 3 to 4. And I said, well, I can do midnight to 6. So I show up to do midnight to 6. Our assistant PD, Harry Wilson, comes up and he says, we got to get you a radio name. He says, at noon, we've got a guy whose first name is Ed and whose last name is almost as bad as Segraves. So we called him Ed Knight, Knight.
Oh, man.
And he's Ed Knight, well, in the daytime. So why don't we call you Don Day?
Ooh.
KKC, it's night at 12 in the daytime and day. Don Day at 12 at night.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, and you know what I said, Ken? Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me write that down so I don't mispronounce my name.
Yeah.
So I have done my first 2 all-night shows and missed my first 2 days of classes from not being able to get any sleep before I would have gone to them. On the third night of the show, I had to do my own news. This is a 6-hour disc jockey show with short records, everything played on turntable, including our commercial and jingles. And I had gotten through the first 2 nights of that, the first 2 hours of the second night, and I just finished my News Alive at 1:55. And I put the record on, and I look up, and leaning over me, there's this guy that looked about like Jack Reacher did in the TV shows, except he had a kind of a pockmarked face, receding hairline, and he had about a 2-day growth of beard. And he scared the pee-wally-doo out of me. And I look up, yes, sir, can I help you? I'm Don Day. No, you're not. You're Scooter Segraves. Don't you ever use that stupid bleep bleep name on my radio station again. Ooh. And just before my heart would have totally exploded, he breaks into a smile that just lit up the room and said, "I Scoot Dick Schmidt. I'm your program director. I'm telling you, you are Scooter Segraves. That is a perfect radio name for this radio station." And so that's where Scooter became my first radio name. You have heard me perhaps refer to my 55 years doing what I would have done even without the little bit of pay I got.
Sure.
As my gypsy radio tour.
Yes.
Well, my first detour on that was about a year and a half in, when I got a little overly partyacious while doing the afternoon show, when the record companies had brought each of the disc jockeys a fifth of their favorite type of alcohol.
Oh no!
So I was out of KAKC for about a year and a half, and during that time, I went to a couple of stations in nearby Muskogee, Oklahoma, and I used fake names that have nothing to do with this, so we won't waste time with it.
Sure.
But then I also was hired by the station that was the reason I wanted to go to Tulsa in the first place, 50,000 watt CBS block programmed KRMG. And KRMG was so far from what I'd been doing on KAKC that nowhere was the name Scooter going to work. So I went, how about Scott? And they went, oh, yeah. So I became Scott. Then I got hired back to KKC, had 9 more years there, and did so well there that when the group that was consulting our station in Tulsa liked what I'd done so well that for their station in Memphis, which was owned by the same corporation that owned KHJ in Los Angeles and WOR in New York, I went to Memphis. Now, you've got to understand, Ken, I was 5'6", 29 years old, except for my 5 o'clock shadow that showed up at 11:15 in the morning. I still had a baby face.
Yeah.
And I still had that same voice that sounded like I was maybe going to be in 10th grade next year, but maybe still a freshman. And I knew that they were not going to want to say, and this is our program director, and his name is Scooter. So I reverted to Scott. And I lasted there for a year and a half until management conflicts led me to another detour on my gypsy radio journey. Went to Mobile, and because I had the idiot idea that I would be the morning guy, I changed my name to the then kind of traditional morning show name of something Morgan. Well, since I've been Scott, Scotty Morgan. I was there for about a year and a half and did quite well with Scotty Morgan, but I just couldn't ever get real ensconced in Mobile, Alabama. It's a place I wanted to be. So I took a job with a new FM station in New Orleans, which was playing albums and was kind of the early WKRP Cincinnati type of station. And for some reason, I decided I would use the name there, Sean McCrae. And don't ask how I came up with it, because I have no idea. I just remember I liked the name. However, Ken, I was one of those late arriving long-haired hippie types. At the age of 29, I had taken exactly 2 tokes of that devil's weed, as they called it back then.
Yeah.
It scared me so bad, I said, I'll never do this again. That was one of many lies I told myself in the gypsy radio tour, because at WRNO in New Orleans, it became a necessity. By 10 o'clock in the morning, owner/GM and I were the only 2 people in the station that weren't so stoned that we could understand each other.
Yes.
So I started smoking a little during the day so that I could communicate to my disc jockeys and to our engineer about the kind of technical sound I wanted. But I made sure never to do it when I was going on the air. And at the time, because that was the prime shift on that kind of radio, I was doing 6 till 10 in the evening.
Yes, that great time.
Well, one afternoon, some record guys came in, and we unfortunately sat on the Mississippi River levee bank right across the street from the station, and we partook of some of that devil's weed. And when the air and the condition. And somewhere along the way, I said, the WRNO, and this is Scott. Well, I'm supposed to be Sean Scott, but I guess I forgot my own name. And the folks went, hey, man, we love you, whoever you are. Just call yourself whatever. So I go back to Scott Segraves.
Great.
I'm Scott Segraves until I get out to San Bernardino, California, which was my next stop. I'm programming, again, another hit radio station, what we called Top 40 back then. So I went back to using a combination of either Scott or Scooter. Prejudices were the same kin back then that they are now. So that I've caught major wazoo from a couple of people, including a couple of my own jocks, for hiring a black-skinned man to do our 7 to midnight show. I mean, I really called hell. What are you doing? You trying to break the color barrier, boy? What is this? Can't you leave things alone? Except that Brother Bill McKinley just got killer numbers. Bill came in and said one day, he said, you know, Scoot, all my brothers say, that Scooter Segraves, he is some kind of bad. But, you know, he needs an initial. It's got to be Scooter Z or Scooter B or something like that. And I said, well, my middle name is Basil, so why don't you call yourself Scooter B?
Oh, so there we go.
And that's where I took it in. It had nothing to do with the fact that that was my name. It just worked out that way. And from then on, I was Scooter B. And then I got back to Tulsa, spent 4 more years there before I came down to New Orleans on the way to getting to work with you in Lafayette, New Iberia. When I was down there, I went on Scott Segraves just because I'd been familiar 5 years earlier. On this station was the FM of the Top 40 AM, but it was doing the same kind of programming we'd been doing WRNO.
Yes.
In fact, the guy who I replaced as PD at RNO so he could get a good job at Memphis, he was now programming WNOE FM, and he put me on in the evening, and I'm going along with there, and I'm just Scott Segraves until the night I went to a party that was, well, let's say it was kind of a Diddy type of party. We'll call it Diddy Light.
Okay.
And when I got to the part where I took off my little short boot, I did not have on any socks because those boots ate up my socks. Our morning guy, Captain Humble, who had worked for me at the other FM station, he gets on there and smiles. Hey, Scott Segraves was at a party last night. You know, he don't wear no socks. Well, I started calling him Socksless. Well, you know, some people spend a lot of money in doing research on how to find the perfect radio name. Captain Humble, between newscast tokes on his morning show, gave me the perfect New Orleans album rock radio name, which I used there. And when I got up to Lafayette, you may remember when Joe Martin, who was kind of the Johnny Fever of Lafayette at the time, he gave me the Cajun for that, which was Sans Chausson. So I became Socksless Scott, Scooter B, Boots Scootin', Sans Chausson, Segraves.
Wow.
And that was the way the Gypsy Radio Tour went all the way through.
Scott, you've been talking, and I've been on this side, just kind of chuckling and snorting every time. Thank God I didn't have a cup of coffee, man, a couple of times just during that story. And it's like, it's amazing, man. You got so many things that are country songs. And I was going back to Tulsa. It just sounds like a country song, you know? Oh, man, that is insane. Yeah. But, you know, we had such good times at KXKC. It was really great. And because I guess we were in the same age demographic, we got along very well, you know, and had a lot of the same experiences. So, of course, I didn't work all over the country like you did, you know. So
it was keep a job.
Yeah, I could keep a job. It was slightly different, but it was fun to work with you. And all I got to say is I'm really glad that we worked with each other, because I don't think either one of us could have worked with the other as a boss. It would have been disaster city.
Oh, no, we'd have killed each other before the first staff meeting was over with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's why I have staff meetings. I talk to myself. It's a lot easier that way. Well, Scott,
Oh, my gracious.
it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. We need to maybe let you ramble along quickly a little bit about what you're doing. I know that you're living in a hidden bunker deep in the woods of Arkansas, but is that pretty accurate saying that?
Yeah, I am on a dirt street, the only person living on the street, surrounded by woods, so it looks like I'm in the middle of 40 acres of nowhere. Yet I am within the city limit, and I'm an eighth of a mile from the ambulance shack and the volunteer fire shack. So I got all the conveniences while still being hidden in the middle of nowhere. And I'm right on the Arkansas-Missouri line, so the little runs up to Branson, where certain things can be procured that cannot be procured here for whatever reason you might want to know that. Don't stitch me off because it's only a misdemeanor up here now.
Segraves, if we did a show, man, it would just be killer because there's so many things I could be saying at all of this. And because of the limitations of Zoom we're recording on, it doesn't blend very well. It's not a smooth transition from my voice to yours. If we cut each other off, it's cut and dried, but it's like, oh my God, in the same control room, it would be incredible. Maybe we should try to arrange that. We could, I don't know, maybe make a buck in the old folks home or something like that. But listen, you said
I'll tell you the truth. I don't think either one of us would live through the first show.
Well, I don't.
We are so good at what we do, but we are each so particular that I will do it this way, and nobody will get in my way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like the same thing that you would say.
Yeah, that's the same. And it was really strange because when Renee Rivette hired me to work at KXKC, she told me at one point that she had reservations about hiring me, as did some other people at other radio stations, because I had been a radio station owner and I was a program director for years. And it's like, you don't take a person who's been in those positions and make them subjected to some lesser mortal, And it's like, no, I went to work, you tell me what to do and I do it, and I've worked at a couple of other stations and it's been the same sort of thing, where it's like, I go to work for you, you sign a paycheck, I do it the way you want. If you don't like it, you get rid of me. And it worked out well that way.
It's amazing because I had quite a few program directorships. I never owned a radio station until I got up here. I never owned a home outright. I never owned a car outright. I certainly never owned a station. But I programmed it up, and Renee and I talked about it. I said, because you may remember I was working for a guy who I won't mention, but he had a little FM station, and he was doing all the workarounds, the cheats, the make do's, the avoid following the laws. And I was just so happy to get out of there. I didn't want to be a program director anymore. I hadn't wanted to be a program director when I was there. Working for Renee and just doing what she told me, and very seldom having to have her even get good. And I know exactly what she's talking about. Say, okay, I won't say that again.
Yeah.
Or I won't play those two back to back again. Working for her was probably the best 13, 14 years of my radio life. And working with you was best 2 or 3, however long you were there, or however long I was there after you came over.
Well, I appreciate the heck out of that, but I agree. Working for and with Renee was one of the highlights of my radio career. And the ownership thing of the radio station, it's not all it's cracked up to be, but you would know that.
Anyway, I can imagine.
Definitely not. We will plan maybe another episode of this at some other time. We took so long to get Zoom operating this morning because, look, 2 guys with faces for radio and voices for newspaper, it was tough getting Zoom going.
All I can do is end this with the line from the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Adding a disclaimer here, this was recorded on Zoom, which Scott had never used before, and we had difficulty setting up because he lives in the boondocks in Arkansas, so the quality is not, let's say, optimum. On the next podcast with Scott, maybe we'll get things back to radio quality. I hope you enjoyed KRP episode 51 with Scott Scooter B. Soxless Sans Chausson Segraves. Thanks for listening. Please hit the share button, the like button, or whatever else if you're listening on YouTube. And all other platforms, you can just, I think, like, and that's about it. But thank you very much for listening, and be waiting for episode 52 of KRP.
KRP, a random production of Ken Romero.